Hey everyone, J7Jace here, bringing you another Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions video, but this time on the top 5 strongest multi-attacks in the game. With the right RNG or luck, these things can absolutely kill and destroy anything. In a game where the maximum amount of damage you can do with a single attack is 999, in most cases this is more than enough, but these abilities in this video can exceed that because of multiple strikes, making them arguably better against bosses whose health exceeds the typical HP cap. This list was hard for me to make personally, as you can argue and take into consideration so many factors like overall raw damage potential, convenience, RNG, if the attack is elemental, and so much more, and I'll definitely be taking all of these things into account. So with all that being said, let's get started. At number 5, we're beginning with Heaven's Wrath. Even though it's the cheapest of Rapha's abilities and the first thing she'll probably have, it's the fastest to cast of the Sky Mantra skills. It can do a lot of damage, especially if it can strike more than 3 times in succession with magic and elemental boosting gear. Let's not forget too that the lightning element is by far one of the best, if not the best, as there are hardly any enemies that can reduce or even nullify its damage due to its element. Some people will argue it's the best multi-hit for these reasons, on top of the fact that swiftness can drastically reduce its charge time. But because it leaves Rapha so vulnerable, silence can disrupt it, and it isn't instant, I have to put it at number 5. In 4th place on my list is Tri-Flame from the Greater Hydra. Its instant range does an insane amount of damage and can KO nearly all enemies in 2 attacks. The only issues are that it's fire elemental, and certain enemies like the Bomb family and Red Dragon can absorb and heal from this. And lastly, you will deal 25% less damage. There is heavy rain and thunderstorms. Even with these few negatives, it's still an amazing ability in most situations. In 3rd place, I have to give it to the Tiamat's Tri-Thunder. Even though its base power is weaker than Tri-Flame, it's just more well-rounded, and nearly all enemies won't absorb or even nullify lightning damage. You will see weaker numbers, but it's still more than adequate and a lot more versatile. In 2nd place is Raze's Holy Breath. Its area of effect is quite large, meaning if you get lucky, you can take out a group of enemies, and it can even get in more attacks than Tri-Thunder or even Tri-Flame, giving it a lot more damage potential. You also have to consider that Raze has amazing stats and can even further boost this damage with accessories as well, making it just by far one of the best damaging abilities in the game. Before I bring up what I have in mind for 1st place, I do have to give some honorable mentions to some other abilities. The Tiamat's Dark Whisper not only looks cool, but it's a very insane attack that not only does solid damage that can strike up to 6 times, but it can also instantly KO or even sleep targets. Some people will argue this should be on the list, and I believe it's completely valid and a good reason. However, I didn't give it a real ranking, as you need to be next to a human character with Beastmaster equipped, making it a bit more limited. Next, even though I'm not a fan of the guy, we also can't forget about Merrick's Nether Mantra skills, particularly Hell's Wrath. While I don't like how its damage is largely based on how low his faith is as well as target's faith, it can potentially do some of the most damage in the game. I'm aware that you can always turn him into a Black Mage and give him a Rod of Faith, but don't even bother, as Rapha is just better. Speaking of his sister though, we also need to include her other Sky Mantra abilities. Nearly all of her other skills, besides Celestial Void, will do more damage than her Heaven's Wrath, but I just don't like the fact that they will take longer to charge despite being stronger. While raw damage is great, you still need to be fast in order to land hits. One last thing before I talk about my 1st place is that Rapha and Merrick's Mantra abilities have been improved in the War of the Lions remaster. Each of these attacks can get in 1 to 10 random strikes instead of 1 to 6 in the original PS1 version. They also seem to be way more accurate and are more likely to hit the target unit panel rather than the adjoining tiles. This also applies to Holy Breath as well. I just wanted to note this major difference between the two versions, since there are a lot of PS1 only players and veterans. Last but not least, my number 1 goes to Balthier's Barrage. Even though its damage is weaker in terms of kill potential than the rest of the other abilities, it can still exceed 999 in total. I also love how you can't miss with this ability, and its range and power is determined by your weapon type. It's essentially like having an improved dual wield that can apply to all weapons, and it can't be avoided. I'm aware that each strike is doing half the damage of his normal attack, and it has no area of effect, but I just love its consistency and its range if you decide to use a bow or gun. The only negative about this ability, in my opinion, is if you get a critical strike on one of your first 3 attacks and it knocks your opponent back, preventing other damaging attacks with Barrage in this action. But in most cases, this is quite a rare occurrence, and it doesn't take that much away from how insanely strong Barrage is. I hope you enjoyed this video and my list for the top 5 strongest multi-attacks in Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions. Let me know if I missed out on any attacks you like or prefer using. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.